everyone, this is Chris. Thank you for joining me. In today's video, I'm going to show you 6 different ways you can use embossing folders. So there are a lot of videos out there, but there are also new scrapbookers and DIYers and card makers. So I really wanted to do something simple as always, just to make the most out of your embossing folders. It's just not one way, but different ways, different effects. So here are some of them I'm going to show you right now, and then I'll come more into details later. So I'm using a vanilla card, just I think because it's going to show up a little better on camera than just plain white. So this is a 3D embossing folder. This works also with normal embossing folders, if you know the regular ones, not the 3D. But the look are really nice. So this is a plain one, nothing special. I just embossed a piece of paper. This is another one with ink on it, just slightly covering a part. This one is using some a tiny little bit of leftover ink on my embossing folder, and I've also used for the shimmer, I guess you can see that it's shiny, I've used embossing powders, but in specific areas, not everywhere. On this one, I've got ink in the background, and I think it's really lovely. It's almost tone, it's not really tone on tone, but I think that the look of it is really nice. Here you have some ink. Also, maybe not in the background, but using the deboss side. And this is another effect using different colors, at least here 2 different colors. So let's start. So this is the embossing folder that I have found locally. It doesn't have any brand, but I know that Tim Holtz or Ranger does a lot of them now, and Sizzix. Any brand will do for this. And I'm going to use the Big Shot because I think it's the best machine, because you can use any dies, any embossing folders, even the very thick dies in there are going to work. With the other brands, not so much. So the first thing we're going to do, and I've cut down some pieces of paper, is that's the normal one. I think that you know how to use a normal, embossing folder. You run it through. Something is important is when you have your cutting machine, this is where you have the pressure when you use your handle. Always put it through this way. That's the way it folds. Try not to put it this way because it can break. Always go in the right way on the side that is folded here. So if you do that just plain, this is what it's going to look like. So I think this step you don't really need to see anything except the fact that it's embossed on one side, and you've got the debossed side, the one that has the creases, which very often, except maybe for the 3Ds, you can use both actually. They kind of have a very nice look depending on what you want to do. So now let's do one more example. So I'm going to do the example that I have here, a very simple one. I'm going to run it through. I have again one side that is embossed. This is the side that has the raised areas, and this is the debossed side. So in this example, what I'm going to do is just run a little bit of ink over the top. It's very simple, but be very lightweight on this when you do that. Don't press too hard, just in case you haven't really embossed that well. This is why sometimes I would recommend having 2 passes into your cutting machine, whatever it's a Cuttlebag or a Big Shot, just to make sure that it's going to be really well embossed. Sometimes people also spritz a little bit of water to make the paper a little softer. I don't like to spritz some water. I think it's enough this way. So you have a look of it here now. It's kind of, the colors are bright, but I just want them to be seen on the camera. But you see when you pass over your ink, it's going to just touch the raised area, mainly the raised area. You can use a smaller ink pan to do this, but I really like the look of it because you've got some color, but not too much, and then you can use this entire sheet or cut it in half and make it and turn it into a card. Now let's try another way. I'm going to run another piece of paper, but what I'm going to do this time instead is I'm going to use some ink All right. So what I'm going to do here, I don't want to, there you go. I'm going to use the same color. This is Spice Marmalade. And I'm going to hit this on the side. You can see here, if you're used to the embossing folders, there's one side where you put your fingers that you can see, you can feel the creases, okay, the deboss, and this is where your design is raised. So I'm going to hit this side first, in this example, with my ink. And I'm not pressing, I'm really staying on the surface because I just want to hit the raised areas. And what I like about the 3D embossing folders is that everything is not embossed at the same height. You've got places where it's more embossed than others. You've got really a three-dimensional effect rather than the usual ones. It's just one place is raised and not the others. I can see that I've pressed maybe a bit too hard at some places. So what I'm going to do, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this, but there are some places on the flat piece here where I can see I have a little bit, you see, of ink. So I'm going to try to take it away. But this is not supposed to be perfect either, right? All right. Now I'm going to put my paper inside. And because it's Distress ink, it's not going to dry on me because Distress inks doesn't react with plastic. It's not going to dry unless you really wait a long time, but it should be okay. I'm going to run it through another time here. All right, and this is what it looks like now when I open it. There's still a little bit of ink. We're going to take rid of that. But on the debossed side, this is what you have. So these are all the places where it's, you know, again, it's the debossed sides where you have the holes into them. So that's really nice. This is one way to look at it, and I really like it. So you can have another kind of design that's going to have a completely different look than this one that is on the other side. It's the same embossing folder, but as you can see, two different looks, which is nice. You've got one embossing folder for two different looks. Okay, now let me clean this up. Baby wipe. Make sure, and you can use also a little bit of water. Let me spray a little bit of water here. You could also use watercolors. All right, and now what I'm going to do is put ink on the other side. So first what I did was putting ink here where it was going to be debossed. Now I'm going to put ink on this side. And again, I'm going to use my Distress ink. Any kind of ink will work. I wouldn't use any archival ink here or StazOn because it's really going to stain your embossing folder. So any dye-based ink will do fine, whatever the brand. Just happens that right now I'm using Distress inks. All right, and again, I'm not pressing too hard, just going over. I'm going to run another paper through. Okay, so let's take a look, and there you go. So this one is probably not as perfect as the other one I did, maybe because I didn't put as much ink. As you can see, the effect, let's take this example here, is not totally the same. I've got more ink here, so depending on how you're going to apply your ink, maybe come back a little over. And what I have done previously was just sliding it, maybe tap a little bit too, so you have more ink on all the surface of your embossing folder. But I really love, even though I have less ink here, I love the look at it. It's really a nice color, especially when the color already here is not white. It has an orangey, yellowish color to it. I think it matches really well. And again, it gives another aspect. Look at this. Completely different from what we have had until now. And I really like that. Again, you can put this into a card shape very easily. No fuss, no muss. You did 2 steps in 1. All right. So now with this one, what you can add, either you leave it as is, or you can run another color on top of it. Like, I'm going to use a different color so you can see it better. I'm just going to hit it a tiny little bit with some green. Just a little bit on top here and there. I usually like to use smaller ink pans to do this, but this one will do too. And again, this technique will work whatever embossing folder you're going to use. I think it's enough. I don't want to put too much, but hey, take a look at that. We came from this to this with a little bit of color. You can also apply this color if you don't like the grungy look of it with a paintbrush if you want to have more color on top of your leaves. And this is something we'll do a little later. There's going to be maybe a 7 option to this, which is also very nice. So again, I'm going to hit this with a little bit, I'm going to do this with the embossing powder here on top. But what I'm going to do before embossing, I'm going to use some Versamark ink in order to be able to emboss my paper later. And again, I'm going to go over it on the same spot. Make sure you have a juicy ink pad here. Don't press too hard because otherwise we're going to emboss everything, which is not really what we want to do. All right, I hope this is going to be enough. Piece of paper, and I'm going to run it through. All right, now that I'm done with this, what I'm going to do very quickly before my Versamark dries up is spread my clear embossing powder on top. I'm putting it everywhere, and I will take the excess away with the paintbrush. I really need to do this very quickly, especially because the paper I'm using right now, sorry, is a paper that I'm not totally crazy about because it dries and it sinks the ink very quickly in. But I have it and I want to use it, so that's good. All right, let me put this back in. Don't worry, you're not losing as much or using as much embossing powder. Again, this is a clear one. And if you feel like there's some spaces where you have a little bit of embossing powder where you don't want it, take it away. So I'm going to continue doing this, and I'll come back in a second, and I'm going to hit this with my heat tool. So before using my heat gun, I always make it run without blowing anything here for maybe 20 seconds to make sure it's really hot before using it. Otherwise it might blow a lot of my embossing powder off of my paper. And there you go. Look at this. I think it's beautiful. It's a tone on tone. You just have the background that is slightly colored. It's the natural color of the paper with a little bit of slightly ink left over on my embossing folder. But look at this. I think it's really beautiful. It has a lot of class here. I think I missed a spot here. But anyway, you got the gist. It's really nice and so easy. So I've used just a clear embossing powder. You could obviously use a colored one to have another different background with a totally different color. You could use gold maybe or copper. That would look absolutely gorgeous, and it's so easy to do. So I think I've went through all the different notes here. You've got the embossed one there, you've got the plain one, you've got one with just the ink. You hit the side here, just the raised area, the most raised area with a little bit of ink. What else? Here, a two-color one in the background and again on top. And you've got the background only with more or less color depending on what you like best. And you've got also the debossed one. So it makes you really use your embossing folders in many ways. Again, you could, I'm using here dye-based ink, but you could use watercolor. I would not recommend using, again, some permanent inks because it's going to stain your, what would I say, your embossing folder. But this is so fun and easy and different looks with one embossing folder, but it really looks every time a little different. Look at this. And you could probably do even a better job that I'm doing here, but I like this distress kind of look too. I really think it's nice. You could maybe put some blue instead of the green because orange and blue really match well together as well. So these are different options that you can do with just one embossing folder. I've just used this to my background. Again, use colored embossing powders if you wish. So easy. And I'm going to make another one using different colors to have a different aspect, and that will be maybe my last and maybe my 7th example here for today. Okay, so what I have here are metallic colors, and I'm going to show you the brand. Any metallic colors will work. You could use acrylics, but the only thing is that acrylics are going to dry very quickly. So if you do this technique using acrylics, go very fast because it's going to dry on your embossing folder, and you may not have time to transfer it onto your paper into your cutting machine. So this is Art Philosophy, and it's got beautiful colors. There are 12 different colors here with a lot of metallic inside. And I'm just going to go and take some of these colors. What am I going to use? Directly on top. I really want this to pop out. I'm being very random here. I don't know what it's going to look like. Now I'm going to add some blue. Okay, some here. In this flower. Maybe you could take more time and use green in places. And depending also of the look of your embossing folder, you might want to have a little more control if you had flowers. Go inside each flower. More color. And I might end up with maybe a little bit of white. There's some kind of white here. It's going to blend maybe sometimes the colors. It's going to look like a silver actually, I think. It's going to, yeah, I think it's going to act like silver. I think it's going to look nice actually. Let's hope for the best, people. All right. Paper. Once you have your paper there, don't move it. Okay, that's important. And I'm going to run it through. 1, 2, 3. Ta-da! Oh, it's not that bad. Actually, I really hope I think the camera is picking up the colors. I can see the white. It's not silver actually, it's really more white, like iridescent white. You can see more here, there's more like a spot there. Maybe I should come a little closer. Yes, a lot of shimmer, and really in real life the blue is really metallic as well as the pink. So these colors are not so bright, maybe because I didn't put that much. You could probably put more, and you don't have to use metallic colors anyway, but I really loved it. So that's another way to use your embossing folders, not just with inks, but also with watercolors, whether they're normal, iridescent, metallics. That's a great idea too. Why not? So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this video and it will give you some ideas. This is another try I had done previously, but you can't see the background that much. Here I've put too much color. I've used too much water using the same technique, but as you can see here, you can still see, look at this, you can still see the background. You can still see the embossing effect. So don't put too much water, put more paint. If you're using acrylic paint, watercolor paint, put more ink or paint than water. Otherwise, you're going to lose your background. But this is beautiful. Look at all of these. I really like this one with the embossing powder. It's so shimmery, and it's very class, I think. It has a lot of class. Debossed, embossed with 2 colors. This one just plain. I like this one as well. Very simple, but it's so classy, I think. And there you go. And just the golden plate one. Look at this. 3D. Try 3D embossing folders. I am sure you're going to love them. Please, if you did love this video, give me some thumbs up because it helps my channel a lot. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button. And also share on social medias, on Instagram, on Pinterest, and many more. Thank you so much. Take care and see you soon. Bye-bye.